So the hunt for Colonel Gaddafi continues. Rebel forces now control nearly all of the capital, Tripoli, and there's fierce fighting around his hometown of Sirte. Meanwhile, the leaders of the National Transitional Council say they are now moving their government from Libya's second city, Benghazi, to the capital. Nabila Ramdani is a journalist who specialises in the Middle East and North Africa. Good morning, Nabila.
Good morning.
Do you have any latest information or stories at all about Gaddafi's current whereabouts?
Well, I do not have, any accurate information about his whereabouts, but it is fair to speculate, having interviewed the man and knowing about, his character over the decades and how he conducted himself and how he ruled Libya, is that it is highly likely that he's still in the country, very much so. He's not the type of person who would leave Libya. He made it abundantly clear throughout this conflict. He said, I lived in Libya, I will die in Libya. And he's also showed that through his, utter defiance. He's behaving in his, typical behavior, dare I say. This is a man who will ultimately come to be defined as a hard man, who fears no one, least of all the West, which is, of course, backing up the rebellion in Libya. And this is not a man who is surrendering. He is, of course, the infighting is still going on in Tripoli itself, where you have Gaddafi's snipers still very active and fighting fiercely for their leader. But Gaddafi is also said to be consolidating his forces along different borders, the border of Algeria, Chad and Niger and Sirte. This is not a man who's giving up.
In a sense, though, the National Transitional Council has to put the Colonel Gaddafi issue to one side and at least try and reassert or assert their authority for the first time, really, in Tripoli, don't they?
Well, I don't think they can put the Gaddafi issue on the side until he's found and until he's indeed captured. Otherwise, he'll still be hovering, like a threat and a very, a very dangerous one. And it will be hard for the member of for the NTC, to convince, all these young, idealistic young men carrying guns around the country who are absolutely driven by hatred towards someone who ruled Libya despotically for 42 years and convince them to drop their weapons, to move on for the reconstruction of Libya. That's just an impossible scenario.
We shouldn't be surprised, I suppose, at his tenacity and the tenacity of his followers, his supporters. There seems to be still a significant number of people who are prepared to go out there and fight for him.
Yes, absolutely. I think we underestimate the number of people who are still very loyal to him. Not only, he's being defended at the moment by his inner circle, but that includes, hardcore loyalists who benefited massively from his regime over the decades. And it's more the loyalty they're showing towards him at the moment has nothing to do with the kind of rewards that he would offer to buy his loyalty. He's very known to offer hard cash or even gold to pay for his security. But I think at this stage of the conflict, the people who are still around him are just there because they absolutely love the man. They came to admire him, and they are as determined as himself to fight not only the rebellion, but I think now it's more to do with a war against the West and a war against NATO. And this is illustrated by his latest, Gaddafi's latest audio message, where he talks about, fighting the imperialistic forces. So the people who are currently fighting for him do include those hardcore loyalists, but also members of his own family. Of course, his direct family, his sons who are heading his special brigades, but also his extended family and people, members of the Gaddafi tribe.
Meanwhile, the United Nations has called on all sides in the conflict to ensure there are no acts of violence and revenge. We heard a very powerful story on this programme yesterday about a British Libyan doctor working in a hospital outside Tripoli who'd seen the bodies of 17 people who had been held prisoner, tortured and then executed and brought to his hospital by, as we understand it, according to his account anyway, by Colonel Gaddafi's troops. we also hear stories, for example, of a journalist seeing Gaddafi supporters' bodies with their hands tied behind their back. So evidence or suggestions on both sides that there are serious atrocities and acts of violence ongoing. How difficult will it be to stop that kind of revenge attack from spiralling out of control?
Well, that's a very good point you're highlighting, and this has, I'm afraid, been going on, throughout this conflict. I was in Libya at the beginning of the conflict, and I have seen atrocities, being committed by both sides. Of course, Gaddafi soldiers who have been fighting fiercely to put down the rebellion from the very beginning, but also the rebels who are very much portrayed as the goodies in all that, if I may say so, have also been equally guilty of war crimes, and that's one of the findings of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and this is the level this reflects the level of savagery that is only imaginable in the context of a civil war, and we are hearing more and more about friendly fire incidents, rebels killing rebels by mistake, but more and more rebels killing rebels because they do not get on massively. And that's, I'm afraid, the immediate concern that the NTC will have is to restore law and order.
Okay. Many thanks indeed, Nabila Ramdani, who's a journalist who specialises in the Middle East and North Africa. Very interesting on the latest developments in Libya.